So I grew up in a rodeo family. My dad produced rodeos up and down Illinois, and I grew up carrying the American flag and barrel racing. And I was also a competitive gymnast. When I was about 8 or 9, my parents took me to a dinner theater in Branson, Missouri, where I saw trick riding and Roman riding for the first time, and I was like, that is for me. And my parents had inadvertently, with the gymnastics and the rodeo background, created the perfect storm for a trick rider. So I started practicing, and here we are 22 years later living the dream. I've had injuries here and there, but nothing extremely serious. Very thankful for that. I take a lot of precautions, try to stay as physically fit as possible, and do everything I can to keep my horses and I safe. It's a lot of practicing and a lot of traveling. I'm pretty fortunate. The horses I travel with right now, they are all completely trained for what I do, and I just have to condition them and keep them in shape, make sure they're healthy, and keeping myself healthy. And it's a lot of traveling, a lot of work, but a lot of fun. We get to meet a lot of great people, and I'm pretty fortunate we get to travel as a family. We have our son with us, and we have great friends that become family on the road, so it's a pretty great life in my opinion.
Mine was almost more accidental. I was casted into a show. I grew up around horses. My father was a farrier. My family rodeoed a little bit competitively, and so I was around the element, but I was never fortunate enough to see a trick rider or a special act that really inspired me to go do it. Then I got casted into a show, and I got to meet other performers and started trick riding indirectly. Then actually my wife is kind of what led me into rodeo, working with her outside of the show and whatnot, and most of my, pretty much all of my, what I would consider my rodeo experiences come from working with her and beside her.
So with a gymnastics background, I'm pretty foundation based. If I come up with something new, I work it from the ground up, from a standstill to a walk to a trot. And I'm a little older now. You know, when I was 10, I would just go try it, and whatever happens, happen. Now I've got a family to think about and rodeos that I'm contracted to do. So with new things, I try to be as careful as humanly possible with myself and the horses. And you know, before I ever bring it to an arena, to a rodeo, I've traveled to a couple different arenas and done everything I could to make sure it's as solid as possible, because you know, the crowd doesn't want to see a wreck, and I don't want to see a wreck. I want everything as good and safe as humanly possible given my profession.
I travel with her when I can. Which is not as much as I'd like to, not as much as I used to, but we actually find time to be together on the road. When I am with her, my role could be anything from setting her props, dad holding the baby in the stands, or actually participating in the trick riding act. We've trick rode together now for somewhere around 15, 16 years. The average couple goes and has date night. Ours is, you know, we get to trick ride in Monticello, you know, and Manawa, Wisconsin. I'm so sorry, Manawa, Wisconsin this weekend. And so we, it varies, it changes a lot. It just depends on the situation.
Is that how you guys met?
It is, it is. I was casted into the same show, different location, and circumstances put us working together, and from there we grew a friendship and a work relationship, and then friendship, and then she fell in love with me, so.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Nowadays, a lot of guys like to be called rodeo entertainers. I'm a rodeo clown. I'm still old school. I wear the makeup and the big baggy clothes and the funny looking hats. And I grew up around rodeo. My dad rode bulls and bareback horses, and my dad clowned a little bit. He was semi-retired kind of when I was growing up, but he come out of the business. At the age of 13, I started fighting bulls, and I didn't know that you didn't have to fight bulls to be a clown. Like, I wish they would have told me that. I'd be so much healthier now. There's not as much practice that goes into what I do to what they do. They have to be on and off horses every day. Now, I work on my craft every single day. Like, we're always looking for something new to do, and we're keeping up with the news and what's relative with the world, because of course we have to stay current. A day in the life of us is very little sleep, a lot of work. It's the best job in the world. I really do. We all love it. I grew up wanting to do it. This was a childhood dream come true. And for me, it's, man, America's lost their laughter. Like, everybody's so uptight now, and everybody's worried about offending somebody. And it's great when we can go out there and we can perform in front of these crowds, and for 2 hours just kind of take their mind off what's going on in real life. Like, we can have a laugh, or we can be amazed at a trick, and it's great when you see kids, like, because I've been doing this so long now that I have children come up to me and go, "Hey, you used to rodeo with my dad." And I'm like, "Yeah, go away." You know, it's like, ah. But no, and now they're wanting to become performers. And I've started so many younger rodeo clowns now, and they come up for help. And it's so neat that we can all give back to our profession.
So for me, I remember being a kid in the stands and growing up with rodeo, and I loved watching it. It was just so cool. I just remember being a kid in the stands, and I was fortunate enough, that our families backed us, and it's become a career. And now what's cool is rodeo is we don't want it to go away. We want to help the generations, and when we get to go out here and get paid and make a living and put food on our table, and hopefully there's a little Dusty Myers, a little Dusty Crane, a little Justin Dickerson up in the crowd, and the people we get to meet and these kids that hopefully we get to inspire by doing what we love, to me that makes it all worth it.
I think when you're young too, you have these. If you grow up kind of around the rodeo element, your goal is to, whether you're a competitor or what we're considered personnel, you want the buckles from the fancy rodeos. You want the chance to perform or compete at a big rodeo. That's a driving factor. And then as you do this for years, like us now, so many years, it starts becoming more about the relationships. When I look at Dusty's schedule, I start thinking where I'm going to be, who I'm going to get to see there, who I haven't seen in a while, who the contractors is, who the pickup man is, so on and so forth. That's what makes it interesting for us now, is we get to kind of make a living by going and visiting people we really care about. And it's kind of rare nowadays to have a job like that.
I've known both of these people for around 20 years. Me and Justin grew up right down the road from each other and didn't know each other until we started rodeoing. We grew up like 30 minutes away from each other, and his dad actually lives about 15 minutes from where I live now. And now we've all become family and friends. I've worked with her and her family for years. I've worked with them. I've worked for them. I grew up, I met her dad, when she was about 14 years old. Yes, and they have a rodeo company. I started working for them. There's very few performers anymore. This is a hard lifestyle because we're gone away from our families. Like, Justin has a full-time job. Like, he was a performer for many years. He took a full-time job. So this has kind of become part-time for Justin, but he still gets to see his family. My family, my wife has the full-time job, and this is my full-time living. We don't see each other that much. I'm on a 3-week run right now. When I get home, I'll see her for one day, and I turn around and go back on the road again.
And like he talked about being away from his family, we're here in Manawa, Wisconsin, and Three Hills Rodeo, the Moorhead family, they've put this on for the last several years. And, myself and my son, we've been with them for the last 3 weeks. And you're just not going to hardly meet a crew better than this. I mean, they take all of us in. They treat all of us like we're one of the kids, and they do a phenomenal job, and they don't get near the credit they always deserve. So it's really exciting whenever we get the call that we get to work with Three Hills and get to be in Manawa.
Mr. Pete Zabel, the main chairman here that you actually did the interview with, he actually hired me 2 years out. Like, I've been hired for this rodeo 2 years ago. He come to Las Vegas we have an NFR convention for all our personnel, for specialty acts, for announcers, for rodeo clowns, bullfighters. And he come out there, he met me out there, and it come on a recommendation of Roger Mooney, your rodeo announcer here. And he's like, hey, you need to get him for your next show. Well, I was booked, so we're booked 2 years out. But he actually goes out to Vegas every year and looks for new talent to bring to Manawa, Wisconsin.
Another, talking about getting hired and stuff, something else I wanted to hit real quick. This is interesting. There's so many moving parts with a production, especially with rodeo. There's so many people involved, whether it's committees, people in townships, contractors, personnel, and then you bring in the contestants, and then you can't forget the livestock. I mean, you've got living animals. This is how they live too. This is how they get fed. This is basically their job. So when you put all that together in one event, and then you get to be a part of that event, even if it's a small part, even if you're only out there for 4 minutes, it is a really neat feeling. And that's a cool, what I like to think of, a really cool American feeling. It's a neat thing you probably don't see in probably anywhere else in the world like that.
Like, the American cowboy is not as growing as it once was. Because, I mean, when we were kids, before they had all the social media, before you had all the computers and the Wi-Fi and the internet and all the side-by-sides, I mean, people rode horses. That's what people did, and they went out and trail rode. Well, a lot of cowboys were made from people that just bought a horse and become a cowboy. And it's a dying breed. But yes, there's a bunch of young athletes coming up today. But nowadays, there's so many different associations. We don't get to showcase a lot of the young talents because they just stay in their region or in their area. Where years ago, 25, 30 years ago, there were only like 2 major associations. So you either went here or you went there. Now there's associations all over the world. There's small regional associations, and we have a lot of great cowboys and cowgirls, but you don't see them because they can't afford to travel. The day's expenses are amazing. When you think of some of these cowboys that they go to 4 or 5 rodeos a weekend, and they're paying an entry fee at each separate rodeo, and entry fees range anywhere from $75 to $150 to $200 at each rodeo, plus the fuel prices now are $3.50 a gallon, and you're pulling big trucks and trailers. And then the food expenses. I mean, some of these cowboys, if they don't win that weekend, we're not like professional athletes that get paid on a contract. You either win or you don't. And a lot of these cowboys, if they have a bad weekend, say they're kind of what we call in rodeo a slump, they're wasting $2,000 to $3,000 that weekend. So you have to be good to compete. Now, the performers like us, we're on contracts to get paid. Like when we show up, we know what we're making. But along the way, we blow a tire, or you have a fender bender, or an animal goes down. That's a lot of money out of our pocket. So it's not like we're getting guaranteed money throughout the year. But I mean, there's a lot of expenses in this. I always said something. I said I love rodeo, but it's the one thing that you can make a lot of money and spend more. But it's a lot of expenses into this. But like I said, it's a lot of expenses. If you look around at all the big semis here, the Moorheads bring all the stock in. They pulled in yesterday with 4 huge semis. I'd hate to have the fuel bill for their semis just to get here.
I can imagine.
There's definitely a for love of the game that goes on with all of this.
Absolutely.
And I know last year with, everything canceling, this particular year has probably been my most favorite year so far because there is such a new gives me goosebumps talking about. There's a new appreciation for every rodeo we're going to. Whether you're the outgate man or you're a contestant or you're us or you're the crowd or you're the committee, we didn't get to do this last year, so this year it's like everyone is just on fire for it. Great moods, new appreciation, even the fuel prices. Everything's super expensive this year, and you don't hardly hear about it because we're all just so happy to be here doing it. Sometimes it's like God gave us all a good reality check last year, like, hey, appreciate this really cool life we get to live.
I honestly think last year was I hate it happened because a lot of people lost businesses and there was a lot of hardships last year. A lot of us lost money. But I honestly think it was the best thing that happened to rodeo because if you go to any rodeo, the crowds this year have been outstanding. There have been sellout crowds everywhere. People are happy to be going. The contestants are glad to be going. A lot of us get in a bad mood. You're on the road for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. You're missing things. You've been dealing with muddy rodeos or just
blowing tires and
it's hard. But man, last year when you're sitting at home and you're having to do another job and you're having to do the 9 to 5, you really, really appreciate being back on the road. And we appreciate that the people that come out and see the rodeos now. I mean, I'm telling you, last night's crowd here was phenomenal.
I know we're all working hard. Anyone who's coming to the show, they're getting the best of all of us because maybe the last couple of years, we've gotten a rut. We're missing our families. I promise you right now, we're all going into every rodeo like it's the last rodeo we're ever going to do.
For us, in rodeo, your competitors, their drive is that ride or that catch or that win or that placing. They're addicted to that winning. And that's great, that competitiveness. For us, that drive is that crowd. We love entertaining that crowd. When that crowd roars and that crowd stands up and we feel like we've gave them their money's worth, there is no greater feeling for an announcer or a professional barrelman or a specialty act than that is just such a great feeling as you're leaving the arena knowing that crowd's been satisfied.
I'm very fortunate on the animal side. I've been part of it from every single angle. My horses perform. My family we raise buck and bulls. So that's part of our living. I've been around buck and horses. I'm around all of them on every aspect, and I can promise you, there is no expense spared with these animals. My horses personally love what they do. If they don't, or if they show any sign where I'm having to ask them to run, or I'm having to feel like I'm asking them for a little more, they're going to go home and they're going to teach little 5-year-olds how to walk around the arena. My horses take care of me. I take care of them. They are my life. My son, we get up first. He's 10 months old. We get up in the morning. Right now he's learning they eat before we do. And I promise you this morning at 6:30 when I was out here doing it, they had people out here with top-notch hay the best grain. There's a vet here 24/7. A couple weeks ago, a couple of the horses got sick in Nashville, Tennessee. They had 3 vets in there within an hour taking care of them. If you're out visiting these, these contractors and stuff, these horses are how they make a living. These horses get the best care, and these horses don't work year-round. In the wintertime, they're out there chopping ice by hand. These horses work 8 seconds, maybe, a weekend, and in between every event, every time, throughout the week, they're out in the best pastures, in the best situations. If we hurt them, we don't get paid.
I will go on this too. In the rodeo business, there's always a theory: your animals eat before you eat. All these people get up and they feed all their livestock before they ever put a bite in their mouth. I mean, why? Common sense will tell you, why would you spend $25,000 to $30,000 on a bucking animal not to take care of it? I mean, that would be ridiculous. It's like right now, one of my featured acts that I carry, I've got a 2,300 pound Brammer bull that I ride. He's broke, he's a big baby. He's injured right now. He come up limping the other day, so he's not here performing. He's at home resting. We have medicated him. I went to the vet. My wife's actually home taking care of him. Just talked to her this morning about him. He's doing great again. But we wouldn't bring him up here if there was the slightest thing wrong with him, because that's how we make a living. That's how he makes a living. If he's hurt where he would never perform again, well, guess what? He'll just spend his life in the pasture and enjoying life, because we take care of our animals. I've seen them. She does a 4-horse almond riding act this week. If one of them went down, she would do a 3-horse or a 2-horse almond riding. We would not make those horses perform. I want you, before you leave here, I want you to zoom in on these bucking horses. These horses are absolutely beautiful. They are big, fat, well fed. I mean, rodeo people, we get a bad rap, but rodeo animals are taken care of. Where else would a wild bucking horse go if he wasn't in rodeo? Where else would a fighting bull or a bucking bull go if they weren't in rodeo? They'd be at McDonald's somewhere. So they're taken well care of here. I think they're fed. Like you said, if one of them comes out with an injury, they're taken care of. Now, if one of us gets injured, well, we'll look at it tomorrow.
We're gonna tape it up and let's go.
It's funny. You asked the best question last, and if you didn't notice how passionate these two were about answering it, you go to anybody here, whether it's a contestant or a personnel member, anybody involved with this rodeo that is either going to compete on an animal or has brought an animal, and they will be just as passionate about these two were. And it's one of those deals where I always tell people, if you question it, if you question the humanity of it or how these animals are taken care of, go home with these people for 2 or 3 days and watch how they take care of these animals. Invite these people to these shows and let them watch how it works in the back pens, and let them watch how this all works. And there's no way you would ever leave thinking, wow, they're mistreated. And that's why it's a very passionate subject for people involved in this industry. Is you might as well be talking about them mistreating their children. That's their perception of this. And so, yeah, if you was to walk around and ask that question, you would probably get lengthy, answers, and probably pretty passionate answers about how they feel about that. Great question, though.
Super great.
And if you walk around nowadays, it's so funny now because technology is taking over everywhere. But there are so many therapeutic stations at these rodeos. A lot of these barrel racers bring these vibration plates, and they stand their horses on the vibrate. It's like taking your horse to get a massage. Yeah, they massage their feet. They've got all these products that they wipe their legs and stuff down with. It's kind of like a gel, kind of like what we would do with liniment or Bengay or something like that. They wash their animals off when they come out of the sand because they don't want the sand standing on them. I mean, last night, before she put her horses up for the night, they had nearly full baths. She was washing them down because they were sweaty and hot.
Yeah, I would give anything if my wife treated me as good as she treats her horses. That would be a dream come true.
But there's so much therapy now. Like they bring it these deals, and they have, what is the deal that they put in? It's like a vibration deal they lay on their back.
Oh, magnetic blankets. Magnetic blankets. My horses travel with magnetic leg wraps, and they look ridiculous. They're out there. A lot of people ask what the masks are that my horses have on. They're fly masks, so flies aren't in their face. There's, like he just said, there's so much that we can do for these horses, and none of us spare any expense. In fact, sometimes I think we all go a little crazy over taking care of them. But if my greatest fault is over taking care of my animals, then I'm okay with that. I just want to thank Manawa and everyone the committee who stuck with it, and I know they didn't get to have it last year, and we sure appreciate being selected to get to be here this year, and thank them for all their hard work they've put into it this year.